This is the Vernier Light Sensor, and it's a useful sensor and used in a lot of our different books. And what it does, it measures the intensity of light. It's easy to use. You just aim this part of the sensor at a light, and it measures the intensity. It's using the units of lux, and the sensitivity of the switch, or the device, actually matches pretty much the human eye. And so it's designed to kind of see the light like we see it. The sensor has a multi-ranged switch here, and this allows you to adjust the sensitivity of the device depending on the light level you're going to be using. There's a 0 to 600 range, and that would be for fairly dim light conditions. Maybe you're in a darkened classroom using some small bulbs and you want to be able to measure the intensity of the light of those. 0 to 6,000 is a setting that I call kind of normal classroom light level with the lights on. And then the 0 to 150,000 level is great for outside. The sun is much, much brighter than the light inside, and so having that ability to go outside to use that is what that's for. So now we're ready to collect some data. And what I want to do is plug in the sensor. It's an analog sensor, so I plug it into the analog port here. And I'm going to do an experiment where I measure the light intensity as the light bulb turns on. And to do this, I need to do my sensor settings a little bit differently. I need to set it up so that when the bulb comes on, it causes the device to begin collection all on its own. And that's called using a trigger, and so we need to set all this up. If we look at our default setting right now, we've got the meter here says illumination 0. I've got it set at the most sensitive, or least sensitive setting actually, and so it's expecting a fairly bright light, but we'll leave that the same. And what I want to do is I'm going to come up here in the upper right corner here, and I need to set up my collection parameters. My default is 20 samples per second, but that's not going to be nearly fast enough for the experiment we're going to do, and so I need to set this up to 1,000 samples per second. So let me do that and say OK. Say done. And it says 10 seconds. Well, I really don't need 10 seconds because I know from experience that when I turn the bulb on, it's going to happen pretty rapidly. And so I'm going to change this to maybe just 1/4 of a second. So I need to do 0.25 seconds. And I will say done. And now I need to enable the triggering, and so this allows the device to wait for something to happen on the sensor before it collects data. And so I'm going to enable triggering, and then I need to set the trigger level. And what I'm doing is telling it to wait for a certain light level to be achieved here with the bulb before it begins collection. And I'm going to set this for about 10,000. I played around with it a little earlier, and I know that 10,000 lux, which are the units here, would be fine here. So I'm going to say done, and I'll say OK. And so now it should be ready for collection. So like we do with other sensors, to begin collection, we press the start-stop button in the lower left-hand corner here, and I'm going to press that. And it's waiting for the light level to reach the trigger level before it actually begins the collection. So I'm going to take the light sensor, hold it up close to the light. When I turn the bulb on, that causes it to begin collection. And we see our graph here. And so we're looking at illumination and lux, and we see that it begins to ramp up here, but it's also bumpy. So we're seeing a little bit more detail than we might detect with our eyes, and that's one of the key reasons to use a device like this. It allows you to measure things that you can't do other ways. My eyeballs don't detect that the light's flickering at all. This device does, because we're collecting data at a much faster rate there. So it's a very useful sensor. It's used across the curriculum in a lot of our different manuals there, and so it's definitely a good sensor to have. The sensor booklet talks more about the use of this particular device, and so it has information about the units that are used, It talks about the spectral sensitivity of the sensor, so it's a good source of information about the detector. There's also additional information at our website.